Hi, it's Jeff Chalmers here from discoverdoublebase.com, and I'm joined by one of our classical specialists. It's the great Phoebe Russell. So Phoebe, thanks so much for joining me today and talking about the audition process.
Yeah, so thanks so much for having me, Jeff. As I've said many times this week, it's such a pleasure to be a part of the Discover Double Bass family. And the audition process is something that I'm particularly passionate about.
Well, listen, I've got some fairly kind of quick fire questions because it's just, I mean, it's a huge topic and we could talk all day, but I thought maybe if we could fire through some and just get some feedback on you, from you. And one of the first things that just randomly occurred to me today was, why is it so important to play, or why do people ask for a solo piece within an audition for an orchestral job?
Yeah, so that's a really important topic. And a lot of instrumentalists, including bass players, always ask, like, why do we have to play a concerto if our job doesn't require that, mostly? And I think when I'm choosing an audition list, I think for me that's one of the most important aspects of the audition, because it's an opportunity for the candidate to show how to create a line. And I think a lot of being a bass player is accompanying lines. And it's very hard to accompany a line properly if we don't know how to form one. So it's really important, firstly, that the candidate can express themselves musically and have a chance to show how they build different characters and colours, but also show how to build a melody so that we know that they'll be able to be sensitive to kind of directing one and accompanying one.
I think that makes a lot of sense. And how do players handle the whole solo tuning, orchestra tuning thing in the situation of an orchestral audition? I mean, how would that typically work? Would they change strings? Would they play it all in orchestra tuning?
Yeah, so it kind of depends on what country you're in. Generally, it will say on the audition list, you know, we expect you to play in orchestra tuning, or we expect you to play in solo tuning. I was quite surprised because I studied in Germany, and in Germany, pretty much all of the auditions are done in solo tuning.
Interesting. Including the orchestral excerpt?
Exactly. So wow. I found that a little strange at first, definitely for the orchestral excerpt side of things. But if you think about it, you know, you're doing the audition on a 4-string bass, with the strings tuned up a tone, standing mostly, or maybe not so much now, but most of the students during my time stood. And then when you get into the orchestra, you're expected to play on a 5-string in orchestra tuning and sitting. So yeah. I don't know if I particularly understand it, but I think the bass does sound its best in solo tuning, so maybe that's a part of it.
Do you, in your experience taking auditions, were you playing standing, or were you playing seated, or would it depend if you were, standing for the solo rep, seated for the orchestral?
I've done that once before. When I was first starting out, I did my first casual audition for Melbourne Symphony when I think I was 16, and I stood for the solo, and then I readjusted and sat for the excerpts. Okay. But in a way it worked, but I think it's a little bit too confusing, because then all of a sudden everything's in a different position on the bass, and I personally just prefer to stand for everything because that's how I practice at home.
Well, I asked we have a sort of study group for people who've enrolled on courses, and I was asking about questions for you. And one of the questions that came up is about memorizing music. And in the audition process, are you expected to memorize everything? You know, what's the optimum balance of music on the page and playing from memory? How's that feature for you?
I mean, I think probably the main thing is memorizing your concerto is really great because it gives you more freedom to express yourself, and you're not so stuck within the music and the bass, and it's not quite so square, I find. I also find the music can be a bit of a distraction when you're playing standard concerto, but it's definitely not a hard or fast rule. Like, I think it kind of depends on the individual candidate and what they're comfortable with. When it comes to excerpts, I'm a bit weird in that I find it quite hard to read music. I mean, obviously I can read music, but like I find I perform better when I'm not reading the music. So I actually do all of my excerpts by memory.
I was going to say, everything that you've played this week, you've done by memory.
Yeah, exactly.
And we didn't need the music stand at all.
No, so I often get feedback from that. Usually the panel are impressed, but sometimes they'll say, oh, you really should, in orchestra, you'd be using the music, so you should play with the music. However, when I'm in orchestra, honestly, if I've got a fairly important part, I pretend to look at the music.
One of the questions that I hadn't heard before was somebody was asking about, do you approach auditioning differently when you're going for a principal role as opposed to playing in the section? Because obviously you're a principal bass player now. Is the process different? Did you approach it differently?
I gotta say, I actually haven't done many auditions for within this section, and I probably didn't approach them differently. All of the auditions I've done would be for solo positions, and for a solo position, I think it's really important to think about what you would like to see in a principal player. So a lot of that is the physicality of the strokes, the musical ideas, being really clear with everything that you do. So that's something that I think about going for a principal role. Now, if my students are going for a section role, I generally say, the main thing is that you're creating a really beautiful, warm sound that can fit well in the section, and thinking about how everything you do could blend with 7 other bass players. So obviously you want to stand out and you want to have a clear sound, but you also want to think about how your strokes could blend with 7 others, and how your kind of tempo ideas could fit within a section, because you don't want to stick out like a sore thumb.
Okay, what are some of the annoying habits that you see candidates display, perhaps, if you're judging on the draw? Or is there anything that bothers you?
Yeah,
I'm thinking the little weird, strange things. That'd be interesting.
Okay, so I'm ready to go with this one.
Cool.
The really annoying one is when someone comes out into the audition with the bow and the strings, and then they just kind of like rip it out of the strings.
Yeah.
And you're sitting there, you're in a bit of a world, ready to hear some music, and then there's just a big thunk as they get ready to play. And then, especially when they're about to tune the instrument in its entirety, please come to your audition having tuned. You can check. Okay, I'm not going to go too much on a tangent here.
Yeah.
But when candidates go and they tune the instrument at a lightning speed, and I'm like, I can't even hear whether that's in tune.
Yeah, if they need to check.
Exactly. How can you possibly check? Just check really nicely and calmly, and compare the strings in a very calm and clear fashion, please.
Yeah, it's interesting, and it's, as you've been saying all week, it's that people are there to just play music, not just to play exercises for a panel, and that's so important to get into that performance space. Okay, lastly, in terms of your routine, I wonder if you could speak a little bit about how much you're practicing typically, and then how that might change as you move towards an audition. Does it increase, does it decrease? What does it look like for you?
So when I get the orchestra list, the list of excerpts, the first thing I do is start to build some sort of practice schedule in my head.
Yes.
So in an ideal world, you'd have the whole day to practice everything that you're doing. Probably, honestly, I'm probably a bit of an over-practicer, but leading up to an audition, I'd be doing 6 hours a day.
Wow.
I don't think everyone needs that. I feel like when I say that, I'm doing pretty calm practice with lots of breaks. I'm definitely not exhausting myself by running things through. But I'll take all the excerpts and categorize them into how much I need to practice each one. So I'll find the ones that really need a lot of practice and try to tackle them at the beginning of my audition preparation, and give each pile of excerpts a time limit. So most of my practice in the lead up to the audition is very organized, and I've really got like maybe 45 minutes on a really hard excerpt and 15 on one that I don't feel needs as much work. And then as I get closer to the audition, like in the week or two before, the majority of my practice is just running through for people, doing really slow, careful practice, but definitely I aim to taper off anyway in the weeks before the audition.
Interesting. And you're trying to get those opportunities to play through your repertoire and get some feedback from people and get comfortable. Yeah. Well, listen, it's been fantastic hearing you teach all of these different ideas and concepts. And the course Smash Your Audition, you'll really talk about preparing maybe for an audition, maybe for an important performance, or maybe just trying to break through a plateau in your playing. Because I do think that whilst the audition process for some can be an intimidating experience, you can have good things happen, bad things can happen, but the process of being focused and having a goal, I just think is a really wonderful thing to go through. So I'd encourage everybody to be taking that approach, whether they're auditioning for an orchestra or not.
Yeah, I agree. And like you said, just taking an audition or preparing for one also just gives you a chance to really organise everything you're doing and focus on a complete variety of bow strokes and techniques and repertoire, from orchestral repertoire to classical and romantic concertos. And I always get quite excited when I'm thinking about preparing an audition, because I'm excited to brush up on everything again.
Yeah, and it must be exciting to hear people come to you and play for you as well, you know.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, great. Well, I think that's a wonderful way to end. And, you know, on behalf of the audience, the crew, myself, thank you so much. This is the last thing that we've been filming this week, Phoebe. It's been an absolute joy hanging out. We've had so much fun, and I've learned so much myself from you. And I really hope that people at home who are on the course just have, you know, enjoy it as much as I have. So thanks for watching. If you want to learn more from Phoebe, we'll provide all the links below. Go and check out her course. It's called Smash Your Audition.
Thanks, Jeff.
Courses, our lessons, our interviews with many of the world's finest bass players.
I was trying not to look
I know. Hi, it's Jeff Chalmers here from bass.com. No, it's not. Just like the one that we have today. Great Phoebe Russell. Phoebe, great to see you today.
I'm sorry. Can I just have some water?
Jeff Chalmers here from...
Don't you
I
don't
know,
start.
I
No.
won't. Greatest artists. Hi, it's... Come on, okay.
One word.
I've got it.
Well
Hi. By one of our classical specialists. Are the Queens.
done. Okay,
Okay.
this is not funny anymore.
Okay.
Thanks so much for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Well, we've had a good time this week.
Part of the Discover Double Bass family.
Well, we've had a good time. We've just been laughing about something previous. Oh no!